American politics seems increasingly driven by paranoia, anxiety, and fear, and one of the most successful ad campaigns in history can help us understand why. Let me explain. Back in 1993, the dairy industry was worried. For years, milk consumption in the U.S. had been declining as consumption of soda and other beverages grew. So the California Milk Processor Board hired an advertising agency in San Francisco to develop a marketing campaign to get Americans to drink milk again. There was just one problem. As the ad agency started to do market research, they discovered a problem. Milk is really boring. How do you advertise a product that no one gets excited about? That's when one ad executive named John Steele made a breakthrough. During a focus group, he observed that while no one gets excited about milk, people get really upset when it's gone. Coffee without milk is not okay. Cookies without milk is un-American. Cereal without milk, now that's an abomination. Steele knew he was onto something, and it led to one of the most iconic ad campaigns in history. Got Milk. The brilliance of the Got Milk campaign was that it didn't focus on the benefits of drinking milk. Instead, it focused on the terrible consequences of not having milk. They called it Deprivation Marketing, and it was wildly effective, especially when mixed with a good dose of humor. For example, the most famous Got Milk commercials were all pretty dark. The first ad, believe it or not, directed by Michael Bay, featured a guy who lost the $10,000 radio trivia contest when he couldn't answer the question because a peanut butter sandwich was stuck to the roof of his mouth and he ran out of milk to wash it down. Another showed a man's arms getting ripped off because of his weak bones from not drinking enough milk. There was even an ad showing the afterlife. A shady businessman is hit by a truck and wakes up in what looks like heaven with endless chocolate chip cookies. But when all the milk cartons are empty, he realizes he's actually in hell. Here's the point. The Got Milk campaign proved that when your product isn't intrinsically attractive, it's more effective to scare customers than to woo them. Inspiration marketing is really hard, but deprivation marketing, that's so much easier. And it's a lesson politicians and their campaigns have learned as well. There was a time when American politics was primarily about persuasion. There have always been diehard Democrats and Republicans, but there used to be a large group of persuadable Americans in the middle, the so-called swing voters. And politicians used to appeal to them with positive arguments, policies, and promises, because whoever could win more of the swing voters in the middle would win the election. But over the last 20 years, that old way of doing things has mostly been abandoned. Because of media polarization and gerrymandering, the number of swing voters has shrunk dramatically, and many elections are now won or lost by tiny margins, sometimes just a few thousand votes in one city or state. As a result, politicians are less interested in persuading the few undecided voters in the middle with a positive message, and instead, they want to mobilize as many of their base supporters as possible to get out and vote. And nothing fires up hardcore partisans better than deprivation marketing, scaring the hell out of them with all the terrible things that will happen if they don't get off their couch and vote. For example, in 2008, during the election between John McCain and Barack Obama, an influential leader from the religious right published a fictional letter from the future describing what America would look like in 2012 if McCain lost. It's an amazing document that you can still find online. It's 16 pages, but here are just some of the highlights of this post-apocalyptic future. In President Obama's America, terrorists have bombed 4 U.S. cities. Christian publishers and radio stations have been shut down. Homeschooling has been banned. Private Christian schools have been taken over by the government. The Pledge of Allegiance has been banned in schools, and so have private Bible studies, prayer groups, and all campus ministries. Churches are required to hire gay pastors. The Bible may not be preached on any TV or radio stations. All Americans over 80 are denied health care and told it's their patriotic duty to just go home and die. And to top it off, gas costs $7 a gallon. But my favorite part is at the end. The letter from the future explained who's to blame for all of this American carnage. The letter says it all started in 2008 when, quote, Many evangelicals thought Senator Obama was an opportunity for change, and they voted for him." End quote. You've got to give him some credit. That is some amazing graduate-level deprivation marketing. Of course, President Obama did win the election in 2008, and none of the calamities in the letter ever came to pass. But that's not the point. The goal of deprivation marketing isn't accuracy, it's anxiety. Think about it. Not drinking milk won't make your arms fall off, or cost you $10,000, or send you to hell. The Got Milk ads aren't interested in facts, they're interested in fear. The mild fear of running out of milk. But when this same approach is applied to politics and the humor is stripped away, it can get very dark very fast. But the goal remains the same, to make people afraid. And we're seeing the same strategy in this election. Here's just a sample of the messages we're hearing in 2024. I'm not going to attach names to these quotes because I don't want to add to the hysteria, but I think you'll get the picture. Civilization as we know it is on the line. Our border has been erased. Criminals are running wild in our cities. The whole world is up in flames. Democrats want people to take your children and do things with your children that are not even speakable. We're very close to World War III. Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. That's a fact. They're going to come after pastors and people of faith like you have never seen. I think our country is going to cease to exist. It could be the last election we ever have. If we elect Donald Trump, we may feel the effects not for years, not for a generation. We may read our mistake in the geological record for 1,000,000 years. If Kamala wins, America will be flooded with 50 million illegal immigrants, stealing our jobs and spreading a massive crime wave across the country. Look, I don't think this kind of rhetoric is going away. It's too easy and it's too effective. Deprivation marketing works, whether it's applied to dairy products or demagogues. But for the Christian, there is a huge difference between being effective and being faithful. Just because something works doesn't mean it's right. As followers of Jesus Christ, we should reject this kind of fear-mongering for 3 reasons. First, because we believe the truth matters. Remember, deprivation marketing isn't interested in facts, but fear. It's not about the truth, it's about manipulating people's emotions. As people who believe in a God of truth, we must reject lies, including lies about our political opponents. Second, we should reject this kind of rhetoric because it impedes our ability to love our neighbors. Jesus said his followers would be identified by their love. But when we marinate in fearful messages, when we are told that everyone who votes differently or who lives differently or who believes differently is a threat, it short-circuits the work of God in our lives to make us into vessels of his love. As Henry Nouwen observed, fear engenders fear. It never gives birth to love. Finally, fear is not from God. The most common command in Scripture is do not be afraid. But it seems like the most common message we hear from Christians in the public square is you're not afraid enough. Something's wrong when the message of Christ and the message of those who claim to represent Christ are on completely different wavelengths. The Apostle Paul said, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love. So, the question we ought to be asking of our leaders and the voices we listen to is, do they have Christ's Spirit? Because those who are constantly using fear to motivate us, whether they are political leaders or ministry leaders, are not leading us by the Spirit of Christ, but the spirit of the world. To learn more, check out the resources in the notes and follow us at holypost.com.